I simply couldn't believe what I was seeing. Johnny, whom I had been married to for 7 years, was sitting at the dining car table with her friend Jim. I looked around, thinking there must be a conductor or waiter somewhere, but strangely, there was none at that moment. All the love I had for my wife had died. Supposedly, it was supposed to be a fun excursion for the two of us, an opportunity to reconnect. I was surprised when she told me that Jim, her coworker friend, would be joining us. I insisted that he was a friend to both of us, but to be honest, I couldn't care less about this guy, and at that moment, I couldn't think of a single reason why he would want to join us. But now I knew, and I also knew that I would need evidence for my divorce. Oh yes, it was all over between us. Of course, seeing them in the act on the table mildly excited me, but I wasn't going to tolerate such disrespect. I took out my cell phone and started recording their date. I had no desire to see or hear what they had to say. It seemed like they slept on that table for an eternity, and I couldn't believe how rough Jim was with her. She seemed to like it. Maybe I should have been that rough with her, but it just wasn't my style. Finally, they stopped, and Johnny straightened her dress. "We need to be careful," she said as they took their seats. "If George finds out about us, he won't be happy." "It doesn't matter," Jim said with a mocking smile. "We've been sleeping together all of last year, and he still hasn't found out." What did I think to myself? This has been going on for a year. I knew Johnny and I had some strained relationships due to my busy work schedule, but it kept a roof over our heads. Sure, Johnny also worked, but what she earned went towards things she wanted: clothes, accessories, salon visits, and so on. The whole idea of taking a weekend to travel by train, see the sights, and spend time in each other's arms had been lost on her. "So, what are you going to do when you go back to him?" Jim asked. "Did you do what I told you about birth control?" Johnny inquired. He nodded. "Yes," he said. "I stopped taking it so I could get pregnant. I told George I'm on my period this week. So, he's not expecting any affection." They both laughed heartily. "So, why do you stay with him?" Jim asked. "Obviously, you don't love him, or you wouldn't treat him like this." "Well, it's not that I don't love him," she said. "I like him enough, but I just don't feel that passionate love for him. Plus, he has a good salary, and you know I couldn't live on what I earn." "Are you staying with him for the money?" he asserted. She nodded emphatically. "He said he could never afford the comfort he's providing on this trip, and neither could you." "When do you want to meet again?" Jim asked. "I don't know. Maybe later tonight after he falls asleep," she said. I had seen and heard enough, and I stopped the video. I returned to the car where Johnny and I had stopped and considered my options. Divorce was inevitable, but there had to be something more. Both she and her boyfriend needed to be held accountable. I took out my phone again and went to the contact section, searching for my lawyer's number, Felipe Gergen. A man answered the call. "Felipe, it's Jorge," I said. "I need you to start preparing divorce papers for me, and I want you to use the prenuptial agreement." "Divorce?" Felipe asked, surprised. "Are you sure about this?" "I've never been more sure of anything in my life," I said. "For what reason?" Felipe asked. "Marital infidelity," I said. "I have a video, and I can send it to you as evidence." "Yes, please do," Felipe said. "I have the prenuptial agreement here. So, the paperwork won't take long." "When do you want the papers to be served?" "The sooner, the better," I said. "We'll be back in Springfield in a couple of days, so maybe you can arrange for them to be served at the station. I also need to know everything you can find about her boyfriend, Jim Simpson." "He works with her," I said. "I'll have our investigator looking into it," Felipe replied. "Send me the video, and I'll take a look. Don't do anything reckless, understood?" "Yes, of course," I said. "You know me." "Yes, I do," Felipe said. "That's why I told you not to do anything." I transferred the video to the tablet, turned on my phone's hotspot, and used it to connect my tablet to our home network through a VPN, virtual private network, that I had set up some time ago to securely access my files from anywhere in the world. The first thing I did was log into our online banking system and go through the usual routine: closing joint cards, transferring funds, and so on. I didn't want to take any risks, even considering the prenuptial agreement. Another malicious thought crossed my mind. Johnny loved using the home computer for her personal emails. Fortunately, she wasn't very savvy when it came to security, so I was able to log into her email account with a couple of clicks. I copied the video first to the tablet and then to the home computer. Opening her email client, I composed an email trying to mimic her tone. I used a cliché subject that sounded like hers. Take a look at my fun train journey. Then, I attached the video to the email and sent it to everyone on her contact list. Friends, family, colleagues, anyone I could find. I watched it for a minute and then hit send. I opened the compartment door just in time to see one of the conductors. I signaled for him to come closer. When he looked at me, I asked, "Everything okay, sir?" "Well, my wife says she wants to move to another compartment," I said. "Could you tell me which compartment Jim Simpson is in?" The conductor briefly checked his tablet before responding. "Do you want us to transfer your wife's things to this compartment?" He asked. "Are you sure? It's economy class and not as pretty as this one." "That's life," I said, nodding understandingly. "Okay," the conductor said. "I'll help you collect her things." We worked quickly, not caring much about how well her clothes were packed. Once we finished, I helped the conductor carry her things to her compartment, which was less than half the size of ours. I chuckled to myself, tossing her belongings onto her small bunk. Let her figure it out herself, I thought. "I'll need to make her a new magnetic keycard," the conductor said. He pulled a blank card from his pocket and inserted it into a magnetic recording device connected to his tablet. After he finished, he looked at me. "Do you know where she is?" he asked. "Yes, I know where she was last time I saw her," I said. "Lead the way." We walked through the entire train and entered the dining car. Johnny and Jim were still exchanging glances as we approached. I sat in one of the table chairs, and the conductor got Johnny's attention. "Yes?" she asked, looking anxious. "I need to give you your new card," he said. "And take the old one." She looked surprised. "What do you mean?" she asked. Apparently, there was a seating arrangement mistake. "So, I need to give you a new key," I said. "By the way, Johnny, did you ever tell him about the prenuptial agreement you signed when we got married?" "What are you talking about?" Jim asked. "Well, if you plan on taking someone else's wife, you should get to know her a little," I said. "Okay," Jim stammered. "Listen, this was all just for fun," he said. "We didn't mean anything by it." Johnny interjected. "That's right, Jorge. It won't affect our marriage in the slightest." "Really?" I said, pulling out my tablet. I fast-forwarded the video to the part where they were talking and pressed the play button. "Listen to this," I said. "I like him enough, but I just don't feel that passionate love for him, plus he brings in a good salary. And you know I couldn't live on what I earn," Johnny's voice said on the video. "So, you're staying with him for the money," Jim said in the video. She nodded. I stopped the video and looked at her. "So," I said, "I'm just a walking check to you, darling." I started to take off my wedding ring and added, "And since you don't consider yourself my wife anymore, I'll be taking this." I grabbed her purse and took out the key to the house from the large keychain she kept there. I took off my wedding ring and placed it in front of Jim. "You can have this. I don't need it anymore," I said, addressing Jim. In the prenuptial agreement she signed, it is stated that in the case of marital infidelity, the guilty party, in this case, Johnny, receives absolutely nothing. Nothing. I'll leave her with her clothes and jewelry, but that's it. I don't think I can continue to pay for her car. Fortunately, I've filed the documents in her name, so it will affect her credit history. "What are you doing?" Johnny said, starting to get up. I grabbed a fork and attempted to stab her hand. She sat back down. "Don't mess with me," I said. "Please," Johnny said, and tears filled her eyes. "Mr. Duval, please, don't do this, sir. I mean, Mr. Duval, please, can't you forgive me? And we can put this behind us, can't we?" "No," I said, rewinding the video to the point where they started talking about impregnating Johnny. I fast-forwarded the video so that both of them could hear it clearly. "You two have been doing this for a whole year and conspired to get pregnant by Jim and pass the child off as mine," I told them. Looking at Johnny at this moment, "I hate you, and I pray to God I never see you again." I looked at Jim. "Before you speak again, you wanted a deceitful woman, right?" I said. "Good luck. I don't think you'll get much support from her family and friends." "What do you mean?" Johnny asked. I shrugged. "Check your email," I said. She pulled out her phone and opened the mobile email app. Her eyes widened. "What have you done?" she asked. "I just shared your exploits with your family and friends," I said. "You seemed so excited. I knew you'd love to share it with others." "You're awful," she whispered. "My parents just disowned me, and my sister says she never wants to see me again. My friends think I'm a despicable woman, and now everyone hates me." "Can you blame them?" I asked calmly. "Please, Give me another chance, she begged. I shook my head. No, I said, you could have ended this at any time, but you chose not to. So, this is the end of the road. You chose your path, and now you'll sleep in it. I hope it was worth it for you. I think they'll serve you the papers when we get to Springfield. Just sign the papers, and we'll be done with this. Then, you and Jim can sleep together. I don't care, Mr. Duval. She said, is there anything I can do to make amends before you? Yes, I said, there is one thing, actually, two things. Her eyes lit up with anticipation. Disappear, I said. She broke down in tears as I turned and walked away. I struggled to hold back tears as I returned to my compartment after locking and securing the door. My phone rang as I put it in my pocket. It was Johnny's cousin, Lisa. I answered the call. What do you want, Lisa? I asked. So, you finally found out about Johnny, she said. Yes, I said. I suppose you're going to divorce my sister, she asked. Indeed, I said. I've already taken some steps. Okay, she said. I understand. Can I do anything for you, George? She asked. I've always had a special affection for you. To be honest, I also found Lisa quite attractive, but I was married to her cousin, which made her off limits. Well, you're quite attractive too, I said. Lisa had a habit of wearing short skirts and tiny shorts around me, always leaving me impressed. So, you figured it out, she said. Now that you've kicked her out, do you think we can sleep together? She asked. Maybe when the divorce is finalized, I said. Okay, I understand, she said. I've been waiting for you for 7 years, so I think I can wait a few more months. See you when you get back. The call ended, leaving me alone with my thoughts. Eventually, something good could come out of all this. The next 2 days passed quite quickly for me. Most of my time was spent on the phone. I rarely left my compartment to avoid confronting those two traitors. I received information from Fred, confirming what I suspected. Jim Simpson was a womanizer. I noticed he had been divorced twice for infidelity. His last wife also accused him of domestic violence. I supposed Johnny would be inclined towards someone like him, but I hoped she would wake up in time and leave him. Just before the train arrived in Springfield, Johnny knocked on my door. Who's there? I asked through the closed door. It's me, Johnny, she said. What do you want? I asked. I want my husband back, she cried. And I want a faithful wife who would love me. But that didn't happen, did it? Please, Mr. Duval, I made a mistake, she exclaimed. You went far beyond a mistake, I said. Get out of here before I call security. You should be in economy class, please, pleaded. We can't just talk, I said. Go away. I don't want to see you again. I heard her mutter as she walked away. Something inside me sympathized with her, but I really didn't care in the slightest. She brought all this upon herself with her lies and disrespect. I got off the train and looked around to see if I could spot Johnny and Jim. I saw them exiting the train a few cars down. Neither of them seemed very happy. Well, I thought to myself as I watched, a man approached Johnny and handed her an envelope made of thick paper. She opened it and immediately burst into tears. I smiled and walked away. I got into my car and drove home. I noticed Johnny's car was gone, and all her belongings had been removed, including some furniture she had when we first got married. I packed up the house, removing all the photos that featured her. I didn't want anything to remind me of her. A couple of hours later, I heard a knock on the door. I looked out the window and saw Lisa. God, she looked attractive in those shorts. I opened the door and let her in. She was carrying a large plate of something that smelled like lasagna. She walked in as if she owned the place and placed the plate on the kitchen table. When she turned to me again, I examined her from head to toe. She was wearing a crop top that reached just below her chest, and her shorts were shorter than I remembered. I wanted to make sure you have something tasty, she said. I don't want you to go hungry. Thank you, Lisa, I said. I appreciate it. Her eyes sparkled as she smiled. Would you like to stay and have dinner with me? I'd love to, she said. Go freshen up, and I know where everything is. I went upstairs and freshened up. When I returned, the table was set, and Lisa had even poured each of us a glass of wine. I pulled out a chair, admiring her slender thighs as she sat down. She took my plate and served a generous portion of lasagna, loaded with meat and layers of cheese. I thought it must have taken you a lot of effort. After serving herself a small portion, I looked at her. It looks delicious, I said. Thank you, she replied. I love to cook, especially for those I truly appreciate. Indeed, the lasagna was as tasty as it looked, and I savored every bite, even wiping the plate clean with a piece of garlic bread she had baked. "You must have been hungry," she said. "I don't waste such delicious food for nothing," I said. "It was the best lasagna I've ever had." She smiled, moving closer to me. "I'm glad you liked it," she said, sitting on my lap. "There's much more where that came from, and maybe someday I'll even bring you dessert," she added, lifting her crop top to reveal her beautiful breasts. I felt a familiar whirlwind as she gave me a passionate kiss. "I need to go home and feed my cat, but I'll be back tomorrow." "I can't wait," I said. She smiled, getting up. "This is just a preview of what I've prepared for you," she said. "I guess you'll have to let little George take care of me until your divorce is final." "Little George?" I asked. "That's what I call a device for lonely women," she said. "Understood," I said. "Well, let's hope Johnny doesn't contest the divorce." She gave me a brief kiss before leaving. Fortunately, Johnny didn't resist the divorce. Apparently, she realized she had painted herself into a corner and decided to end the marriage. She and Jim managed to keep their jobs, but from what I heard, it was a struggle. Fred called me to inform that the signed papers had been filed, and in 30 days, I would be a free man. I was happy. I was relieved to get rid of the unfaithful wife, but some part of me felt like something was missing. I had loved this woman for many years and had hoped to retire with her, surrounded by children and grandchildren, but that was not meant to be. I was also disappointed that I couldn't get back at Jim. I had considered filing a lawsuit for alienation of affection, but Fred said it was a waste of time. I had thought about beating him to the brink of death, but I dismissed that idea since I didn't want to end up in jail. Lisa came over every night with something she had cooked, and we would share dinner. She even made a mark on my calendar, counting down the days until the divorce would be final. She was a relentless tease and even gifted me a couple of DVD discs filled with selfies and homemade videos featuring little George. Soon, the 30 days passed, and I received the documents indicating that the divorce had been completed. Finished. I was surprised not to have heard anything from Johnny, as I had expected her to call me or do something foolish at this point, but she hadn't. Well, Lisa didn't wait for my call. She came over that day and knocked on the door. It seemed strange because I had already given her a key and told her she could come over anytime. I opened the door and experienced the shock of my life. There she was on the porch, completely naked. I ushered her inside and kissed her passionately, running my hands over her smooth skin. She kissed me with the same passion as she helped me out of my clothes. As we embraced, I realized I had to be with this woman for the rest of my life. She must have thought the same. She turned on her side, looking into my eyes. "I've always loved you, George," she said. "I'll never treat you like my silly cousin did. I want to spend the rest of my life right here with you. Does that mean you'll marry me?" I asked. She smiled and hugged me. "Yes, darling," she said. "I'll marry you and make you the happiest man on earth." We kissed and made love a bit more before falling asleep in each other's arms. A few days later, Johnny's father called me. Lisa and I had just made love and were lying in bed watching a movie and sharing a bowl of popcorn. "George, Johnny is in the hospital," he said. I sat up in surprise. "What happened?" I asked. "That boy she was with beat her up," he said. I told her to call the police, but she refused. "Did she eventually?" I asked. "Yes, but I don't think it will last if she stays with him," he said. "Well, we'll go there to see how she's doing," I said. "We?" he asked. "Yes, Lisa and I said. "Is Lisa with you?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "I couldn't handle this without her." "All right," he said. "We'll meet you at the hospital." After ending our conversation, I explained to Lisa what had happened and told her what I had found out about Jim Simpson. We were both angry at Johnny for what she had done, but neither of us wanted to inflict physical pain on her. We freshened up, got dressed, and headed to the hospital. After speaking with the nurse, we were directed to her room. She looked terrible. Her face was bruised, one eye was swollen, one arm was in a cast, and the other had an intravenous drip. She let out a weak moan as we entered the room. I wanted to hug her and reassure her that everything would be okay, but I held back. "Mr. Duval," she said, and a tear rolled down her cheek. I raised my hand to stop her. "You can call me George," I said. "What happened?" I asked. "Jim wanted to use my car to take his girlfriend on a date, and I told him no," she explained slowly. "He got angry and started hitting me, calling me no man. I told him it was my car and that almost half of my salary goes to him. I wouldn't let him use it to impress some woman. He didn't stop hitting me until I threatened to call 911. That's when he ran off. I don't know where he is. I had trouble breathing and my chest hurt a lot, so I called 911 and they brought me here. Did you tell the police what happened? Lisa asked. No, she said, I was afraid. I thought if I had him arrested, he would kill me when he got out. I shook my head at what I heard. Let me understand this, I said. You ran away to live with the guy you slept with, and now he's sleeping with someone else, is that right? She sobbed and nodded. Yes, she said, I did. But you don't deserve this. He committed a crime and needs to be behind bars, I said. Johnny, I said, did you know he had a history of domestic violence? I knew he could be a bit rough, but no, I didn't know that, Lisa said. She hugged her cousin and tried to comfort her. Johnny noticed the diamond ring on Lisa's finger. Are you engaged? Johnny asked. Lisa smiled and nodded. Yes, she said. George and I are getting married. Johnny began to cry, and her tears soaked Lisa's shirt. But you're still my cousin, and I still love you, even though I think you were foolish for what you did to George. At that precise moment, Johnny's parents entered the room. They were furious when Lisa and I explained what had happened. All right, said Cliff, Johnny's father, we'll stay here with you and take you home when you're discharged. You'll stay with us until you can stand on your own. He looked at me and gestured for me to step into the hallway. What do you know about this guy Simpson? He asked. I told him what I had learned from Fred, and he nodded, mentally taking notes. And you say he works with Johnny? He asked. Yes, I replied, nodding again. All right, I'll take care of Simpson, he said. I won't argue this with you. The less you know, the better. Cliff walked down the hallway while talking to someone on his mobile phone. I headed back to Johnny's room. Johnny's mother looked at us. I'll stay with her tonight, she said. Cliff will take care of getting her things from that guy's apartment. Thank you for coming by. You're welcome, I said, hugging her. Johnny looked at me with tears in her eyes. I'm so sorry, she said, for everything. Can you forgive me? I hesitated for a moment before speaking. I think so, I said, realizing that 2 other women were watching me. After all, we're still going to be family. Thank you, she said. I approached and hugged her goodbye. Get well soon, I said, kissing her forehead gently. Take good care of him, Johnny told Lisa, please. Lisa smiled and nodded. I will. We left the hospital and headed home. I had no idea what Cliff meant regarding Jim, but I had heard stories about his military service. I also knew he had connections in high and low places. So, I kept an eye on local news, even checking the obituaries. I found nothing, but a week later, a small article appeared in the local newspaper about a man who was attacked and brutally beaten near a local bar. According to the story, a man named Jim Simpson had encountered a group of men who eventually broke 3 ribs, his jaw, kneecap, and arm. Cliff retrieved Johnny's belongings from the guy's apartment and brought them back to his home. Her parents despised what she had done to me, but they still loved their daughter and continued to support her. Lisa and I got married a couple of months later, as her parents had passed away in a car accident a few years ago. Cliff walked her down the aisle and shook my hand. Johnny came with her parents and cried when the minister pronounced us husband and wife. We had a fantastic honeymoon in Las Vegas. Upon our return, we moved her things into the house. She decided that, since I made more than enough for both of us, she would quit her job. Now, I have a new job, she said. What is it? I asked. Making you happy, she said with a mischievous smile. And she did. And then, one day, a few months later, she uttered words every man fears. We need to talk, she said when I came home from work. Is something wrong? I asked, fearing her answer. Well, she said, we'll need to redecorate one of the rooms. Why? I asked. She smiled. Because, she said, you're going to be a dad. I jumped for joy and hugged her, covering her face with kisses. Are you happy? She asked. I'm the happiest man in the world, I said. Then, take me upstairs and show me how happy you are, she said, and so I did, again and again. Yes, I thought, sometimes life gives you lemons and sometimes, in return, you get something much better.